I slapped an actual boat engine onto an inflatable paddleboard and it was insane. This all started when I tried to build a cheap fishing micro skiff that could compete with more expensive fishing boats. While I don't have much money to spend on this, I do have my building skills and cheap Chinese paddleboards from Temu.
Okay, so this may actually be the coolest or the dumbest thing I've ever bought off of Temu. This is a jumbo sized paddleboard. Supposedly it's 14 feet long, about 5 feet wide. So it's bigger than a lot of micro skiffs and almost as big as some bass boats. This is very heavy. Definitely feels like it's twice the weight of a regular paddleboard. Gosh, it's so long. Jeez. Wow, this thing is huge. It is almost as big as a boat. This thing is pretty incredible. So we've got 2 filler ports on it here in the back. Let's see what it came with to fill it up. Ah, here's the air pump right here. This board is ginormous. It's gonna take a long time using a dinky little hand pump. So I brought an electric air pump so we can get this done real quick and get on to business. It's been running for at least 10 minutes on the one pump, so I added a second air pump on here to help move things along. I've been through 2 battery pumps and both have failed to completely inflate this thing. So now I'm onto a corded air pump to get this thing all the way topped up to 15 PSI so it's nice and hard. This thing is massive and it's so wide. The thing's about 5 feet wide. It's 14 feet long. I mean, I could lay out on here 2.5 times, but guys, I'm blown away by the quality of this. It's got a beautiful deck on it. It's got these heavy duty lifting handles all the way around it. The bungee cords, this thing is incredibly high quality. It's got rub resistant material on the rails of the board on the back. Look how wide it is. I'm 5'10", and this is me laying across it. Let's prop this thing up and do a standing test on it. I've got 2 supports under the board spaced out about 8 feet apart. I'm gonna stand in the middle of this and see what kind of strength the board actually has. Yeah, look at that. Across an 8-foot span, this thing's able to support my body weight. And look at this, I'm gonna bounce on it a little bit. And I definitely feel a little bit of flexing, but not that bad. Let's look on the underside of the board, see what it looks like. We've got 3 fin boxes here. We got a nice toe ring up here. Overall, I am just absolutely impressed with this thing. This thing is so cool. Our Chinese paddleboard is as big as a boat, so it needs a powerful boat motor. So I got this 12-volt electric trolling motor with 30 pounds of thrust in order to, hold on one second, I'm getting a phone call. President Xi of China. Ni hao, sir. No, I didn't mean any disrespect, sir. It's a nice paddleboard. So Temu does a great job on product shop. More power? Yeah, I can give it more power. Okay, yeah, I'll put that motor on. All right, 再见. To power this jumbo paddleboard, I've got this 4 horsepower, 4-stroke gasoline engine straight from Temu. That's gonna make this board move it. Hold on one second, guys, I'm getting another phone call. President Trump. Hello, sir. Congratulations, 3rd time's a charm. Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's the biggest, most beautiful board you've ever seen. That's what they all tell me. Yeah, it's built like a wall. You would love it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. More power? Oh yeah, sir. We're gonna make boating great again. Like, what era are you talking about? 1980s great again. All right, copy that. In order to power this paddleboard, I've got this 1986 6 horsepower Evinrude motor made right here in America. I just got to figure out some way to mount it on the back of this thing. But I think with this motor, this baby's gonna fly. Okay, now that I'm carrying this motor around, it's a lot heavier than I had originally anticipated. It's gonna be difficult to make a strong bracket for this. Now right here, this is a good height for this motor because the bottom of the anti-cavitation plate on the motor is just about flush with the bottom of the board. So we got about 13 inches off the deck. And then the other thing we need to consider is putting a slight pitch on this transom like this, because boats are always shaped like this. I don't know why, but we have to put an angle on it like that. We need to build a support system that goes all the way around this board that has enough strength to support this motor, plus the power that this motor is going to be putting into the board when it's running.
So I got busy cutting these 2x6s and laying them on the boat and then trying to determine what angle I wanted to have my motor mounted at. Boats always have a kicked back angle on the transom, so I tried to measure out an angle and transfer it to wood and cut it on another angle, and then that way it can match up with the pieces of wood that were on the boat. All very complicated stuff. Very carefully, without popping the inflatable board, I popped some screws in to hold my verticals up. Then I could lay my horizontal piece across the back. This was where my motor was going to mount to, and figure out what the height I wanted. I pre-drilled it, and then I used some Gorilla Glue and put some glue in between all my wood connections, and then I shot it through with a whole bunch of screws, so this thing was going to be crazy strong. I shot in more screws, and then more screws, and then more screws, and then I marked off my bracket, took it off the boat, and flipped it over. That way I could do my final connections here out on the ground. But now the tricky part was flipping all this upside down and getting it all to line up in the same spot, and then applying the Gorilla Glue between the wood connections and shooting in a bunch more screws. Now all this will get fiberglassed in later, but these screws and wood glue is going to be incredibly strong. And when in doubt, I just slammed some more screws into it. I then flipped the bracket over and tried to break it off by kicking it, and this thing is dead solid. It's not going anywhere. So I threw it back on the boat and then put the motor in place to see how my placement was, and I think it was perfect. The bottom of the anti-cavitation plate is lined up with the bottom of the boat, and it looks phenomenal. Once I was confident with the shape of the bracket, I took it off and I used the Sawzall to cut off the overhanging wooden pieces. I also took the Sawzall and kind of cut off the corners, and in that way it gave me a little bit less grinding to do. I pulled the grinder out and I rounded off all the corners, all the cut edges, made everything smooth, because when we fiberglass, we're going to need smooth edges. I wasn't wearing gloves and I whacked my finger with the grinder, which was really stupid. Yeah, I got a little bit of blood out of it, but I'm okay. I put some gloves on and I went ahead and rounded everything else off. I laid the bracket back on the boat and determined I need a piece of wood that will push on the back of the boat. So I cut another 2x6 and I rounded the tip of it really nicely so it can touch the back of the paddleboard and push on the back of the paddleboard like that. I used some screws and I shot it into the main part of the bracket, and then I realized I need a little foot on this thing to go into that handle pocket. So I cut a little piece of wood and slid it right in there. I made a mark, and then I went ahead and I put some wood glue on that, and then I shot some screws into it and mounted that little foot piece on there, and then that way that foot piece will sit right in that handle pocket, and then it'll keep that bracket stuck down to the board really securely. And the smooth tip of the board that goes down will push on the back of the paddleboard, so most of the energy will actually be transferred through the back of the paddleboard and not actually through the handle holds itself. Now the front of the engine bracket needs a way to attach to the paddleboard as well, so I cut these little pieces of wood that are going to slip under the handholds. I shot them in with screws into the main part of the bracket. Yes, I used wood glue, and look at that, it slips right under the handle hold really well on both sides. It actually turned out pretty well. I went with like a forklift style design, so I've got these two skids running up the side of the paddleboard, and then I've got the skids mounted on the paddleboard handles in the front. It's going to be really strong because when we apply throttle to this motor, it's going to want to lift the front of the skids up like this, but they're going to be securely mounted down. Now I did all this with 2x6s, so it's all pretty solid. I did use Gorilla Glue and I used 3-inch long screws on everything, so it is pretty strong, but we still need to add some more strength in there. We're going to fiberglass and epoxy resin over all these joints, so it's going to look like an actual boating product, and it's going to be very, very strong. I stopped into the fiberglass store, as one does, and I got some 2-part epoxy and some fiberglass mat and all the supplies that I needed. I mixed up my epoxy and started to apply it all over the board. I then cut some pieces of fiberglass mat and laid it out onto the epoxy over the joints, making sure to massage the glass mat into the epoxy really well. And then I epoxied the rest of the bracket and added my strips of fiberglass cloth everywhere that I needed. Once it hardened it up, I got busy grinding. Once the epoxy cures, it's as hard as a rock, and there's lots of these little hairs sticking out, so I did a lot of grinding to flatten everything out, make it really smooth. That way I could lay out another layer of epoxy over everything, and then that way this whole thing would be nice and smooth and glassy, just like a real boat is. Once I got done with the rough sanding and grinding, I switched over to a sanding sponge, and I really knocked this thing down, made it nice and smooth so it had no burrs on it, epoxied it, and then I started the painting process. I painted most of this thing white, And then I switched over to a nice blue color that matched the paddleboard so it would blend right in. Went really thick on all my paint, taped off my edge so I'd have a nice edge on it. And this thing is just nice and buttery smooth and glossy, and it really looks like a boating product. It looks really cool. Now I had to take this old 2-stroke motor over to Old School's garage and have him get it running. So this motor was made when I was 1 year old. Are you sure it's gonna work?
Oh yeah.
No, I don't see any spark.
It's
No spark.
It's killed.
So the kill switch is jammed up.
Kill switch is the rubber.
Dry rotted?
Yeah, dry rotted.
Yep, spark.
Yeah.
Is that where you have your 1988 parts? So are we gonna run or are we gonna blow up the garage with this?
Blow the garage right up, baby.
You sure you don't want to move the gas can away from it?
No.
Whoa, she works. Now that we allegedly have a functioning motor, it was time to get this thing out to the canal and get it all set up. You can transport this in a small car, inflate it when you get to where you're going, keep the bracket up on a roof rack, and then put them together at the boat ramp.
Now come check this out. The back tab of the bracket goes under the handle there, and the back of the bracket pushes on the back of the board. So this won't be able to pop up because of this right here. And then up here, we just got to put the front tabs in the handle holds. So one of them goes in pretty easy. And then the other one, we got to kind of bend it and get it into place. I'll slap a zip tie on each one of the tabs, and then this thing is not going anywhere. This thing's a little heavy. That is beautiful. All right, now listen, Old School. You're the mechanic. I need you to double check those clamps, because I have lost a motor in the water before. I've done that.
I was just thinking that same thing. You are good to go.
And this thing ain't going anywhere without the fuel tank. I didn't really make a proper spot to mount the fuel tank onto, but it should just go on one of these skids right here. Okay. I got the paddles. We're definitely gonna bring these in case the motor breaks down. Lift it and just walk it out. Walk it out, walk it out.
We got off to a rocky start when the motor wouldn't start, but a little bit of Old School magic and we got it going.
There we go. All right, we got it cranked up. You look at this, man. This is gonna be the ultimate fishing rig right here. We got 2 people on this thing, totally stable, 360-degree access. We could put chairs on this thing. We could do anything. That thing looks beautiful. Look at that. Look at that baby purring along. I'm gonna let you do the first honors. Okay, I'm gonna get down though. Hang on. Let me get down. I'm gonna hold on here.
Okay, that's full speed.
It better not be full speed. Oh my goodness. Oh, she's cavitating.
A little too high.
Oh, it's too high. Well, let's get our weight down on the back. I don't know what we can do here. Let's, all right, hang on one second.
We'll go back and cut the transfer.
Do you have a saw?
Yeah, I got that.
You have a saw?
Yeah.
All right, let's go cut it.
So it turns out my motor bracket was too high, so the engine was riding too high and ventilating, which is where the propeller starts to suck up air and we lose propulsion. So I had to go back to the boat ramp and work on cutting the bracket down about an inch lower. I had to cut off all my beautiful fiberglass and paint job, but that's okay.
All right. Whew. I need to re-glass this up later so water doesn't get into my wood. Oh yeah!
After lowering our engine mount, the propeller got a lot more bite and this thing went really fast.
Dude, this is like, I'm kind of scared actually. This is crazy. Oh my gosh. All right, just go easy. Go slow, go slow, go slow. All right, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Slow it down.
It's getting the fight.
Holy
It's
smokes. Yeah. Wow, that is fast.
We then played around with weight placement on the board, either moving our weights forward or backwards to get the thing to plane or not. Made a little mistake when I got too far forward on the board.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Oh, whoa, whoa, what was that?
You could have nosed over.
What was that? What
Too
happened?
much forward. That's
Oh, I just bit the front?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It went to Hank too.
Old School made some adjustments on the motor and we got this thing ripping. It was so fast. Now the next thing to do was do some turning tests on this and see how well this thing turns, or if it's going to want to bite the rail and flip us over. The turning radius was actually really good and the board carves in really nicely in a turn.
Pretty good.
The board performs really well with 2 riders. It goes really fast even with both of our weights on the board. Keep in mind this thing is only a 6 horsepower, but it is an old 2-stroke. Carves great, turns great with 2 people, but I wanted to see how this was going to do with the solo rider.
All right, let's do an acceleration test. I'm gonna punch it and we'll see how this thing gets up and goes. Oh! Wow!
The board has a great hole shot and gets up on plane really fast.
Guys, it feels like I'm flying. This is nuts.
But at high speeds, we start to see the flaws of having a very flexible board.
Oh boy, wow. That is wild. So it does start porpoising a little bit, which is a little scary because if the thing slaps down too hard, creates a suction, I'm gonna get launched off of this thing. So I do gotta be careful with that. I do have my kill lanyard on, so I guess worst case, it's just gonna shut the motor off, but it does make me a little nervous. All right, let's see if we can do a standing test now.
Board's really easy to stand on, especially when it gets moving, and it's really nice to be standing when I'm making my turns. It kind of feels like I'm carving in and out, just like a real surfboard or wakeboard would ride. And the standing position allows you to absorb the bump of the waves. And I just can't get over how fast this thing is.
1, 2, 3. Whoa, it's starting to bounce, look at it. Oh, I can counteract it, there we go. Yeah!
Oh my goodness, look at that thing rip.
Oh my goodness, oh boy, that was scary. Yeah, what happened? The board lifted up, man. I was like inches away from that thing.
We were blessed to have a really nice glassy day out on the water, so Old School and I put the beat down on this board. We got this thing up to top speed. We went really far. We did a whole bunch of carving and turning tests with it, and this thing was an absolute dream. It was like riding on a magic carpet. You just floated right over the water. Now this thing rides awesome in the glassy water, but we need to know how it does in the choppy and the rough water offshore. So we're gonna take this thing out in the ocean and see how it performs in a harsher situation. Now, I did do some donuts with this thing. I threw it into some donuts, and after a few donuts, the motor died on me. Uh-oh. I might have wiped this motor out doing the donuts. It stalled right as I was doing my 5th donut, and now it doesn't want to restart. This is not good because we are a long way away from the dock.
Old School figured it out. It seems like it's a wiring issue. There's a loose wire in there, and if you rattle the wires around, the motor works perfect. You rattle the wires around again, and you totally lose power. You gotta get this thing back to the van. We're gonna go real smoothly. We don't want to bounce the motor and kill the wiring again.
Old School figured out some of the electrical components that were under the flywheel were just really old and dry rotted and started to wear through. While he tries to get the engine going again, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, Factor, and their prepared meal delivery service. If you're like me, you work hard all week, and the precious free time you have, you want to spend enjoying doing the things you love with your family. Skip the grocery store chaos, forget about the prep work, and say goodbye to cooking fatigue. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals directly to your door that can be ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Stop getting that overpriced takeout food and get Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved menu of options. A few of my favorite Factor meals is the Tex-Mex beef bowl with green chili, cheese sauce, and cauliflower rice, and the pesto bacon tomato chicken bake with garlic and herb broccoli. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50JOEOceanside to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50JOEOceanside at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Try Factor today and use the promo code to start getting delicious meals delivered straight to your door. Okay, let's get the board out on the ocean. Old School opened up the throttle and ripped this thing out in the ocean. I was in the chase boat and I struggled to keep up with him, so I deployed the drone and followed him. I jumped on the board to see what I could do with it, see how much this thing can actually handle. I was blown away at how well the board performed. It jumps right across waves, right through the choppy water. It is a little bit rough ride on the knees, so standing up is a little more comfortable, but then it's a big time quad workout on your legs because you are just compensating for all the waves. You are basically the shock absorber at that point. It leaps across waves really, really well, and it doesn't feel like it wants to flip over backwards or sideways at all. The board and engine can handle some serious abuse, probably more abuse than I can take at this point. I think if I had like a rope or a mount or something to hold onto with my front arm, I think I'd be able to go a lot longer and endure a lot more punishment on the board. Our giant inflatable paddleboard is awesome, but it's such a workout running it out here in the rough water. But I want to show you what just happened. So I was kind of leaning forward to stabilize myself, and I was pulling on the tiller arm, and it popped out, and I fell forward, and my kill lanyard popped out and shut the motor off. So the safeties work perfectly. I was having a lot of fun. I got a little bit too cocky and I leaned too far forward into a wave. So, operating this board is a literal balancing act because if you have your weight too far back, it won't get up on plane. And if you have your weight too far forward at the wrong time, you can jam the nose into the water and you'll wipe out. So, just like real surfing, it's a combination of getting your weight forward and backwards at the correct time to compensate for what the wave's doing. It's a lot of work, but it's incredibly fun. The board and motor is an absolute beast with one person on it, so we went and put both of us on it and we jumped this thing around. It's a lot of fun, but it is a rough ride for the passenger because they have to sit up front and get bounced around quite a bit. We need to hang a rope with some knots onto one of the handle holds, that way it's easier to climb up. And I think the rope would make a great handhold to stabilize yourself while running in rough water, but let me know, what would you use to actually hold on to and stabilize yourself while running in waters like this? And with this flat bottom hull, if you get your weight too far forward, the board sucks down and sucks the nose right underwater. This has to be one of my funnest boat builds ever. But enough with the fun and games. It's time to turn this thing into a fishing beast. I was shopping at Home Depot the next day and I had a moment of inspiration when I saw the Milwaukee packout toolbox system and realized I could use this on my boat as fishing tackle box. The thing has all types of different containers and it has this base that you can mount onto something, and then all the other boxes will mount onto the base and interlock with each other. So this Milwaukee packout system will act as a cooler, a dry box for emergency gear, and my fishing tackle box. And they even make this cool coffee cup that latches into the top of the box.
The ocean test was crazy. It went so well. In fact, Old School wants to put a bigger motor on the bracket. We want to up it to maybe like a 9.9 or maybe even a 20 horsepower. And I really think the board can handle it. So comment below and let me know if we should up this thing to a 20 horsepower at some point in the future. But right now we need to deck this thing out and turn it into a fishing skiff. We're gonna put some rod holders on here and we're gonna install our Milwaukee packout fishing system here on the boat. I don't know if anyone's used a Milwaukee packout system like this on a boat. I think it's gonna be awesome because all these boxes are IP65 water rated, so they're basically waterproof. The only thing I'm worried about is the latches on here are not stainless steel, or they don't appear to be stainless steel, so they could rust. But other than that, I don't see any reason why these shouldn't be used on a boat.
I got these really cool kayak style rod holders. You just mount the bases anywhere onto something and then the rod holder snaps into the base securely. So it is removable. When you're transporting the boat, you can take the rod holders out. The electric trolling motor fits in place of the gas motor really nicely. Then I figured out where I wanted to mount my tackle box system. I removed the base, got it lined up, and I drilled into the wood, and I used some nice heavy duty lag bolts to mount the frame down. Then the boxes just latch into it, and that's it. That's how easy the packout system was to install, and that gives me my cooler, my dry box for my emergency gear, and then my tackle box. And you can open up each box individually without disconnecting the others. And my coffee cup even stays securely on top of all the boxes. And I mounted my fire extinguisher onto the bracket, and that kind of freed up some space inside my safety gear box, and it keeps the fire extinguisher nice and accessible in case of emergencies. And then finally, my deep cycle battery, I just ratchet strapped it onto the skid of the motor bracket. And simple as that, we are all tricked out for fishing. Rod holders, tackle box, cooler, dry box, everything we need to go out and enjoy a day of fishing.
On the top level here, you've got all your lures, your hooks, and all your tackle gear up there. On the second level down, you can open this up. You've got all of your safety gear here, flares, fire extinguisher, all that. And all these boxes are IP65 waterproof, so water's not gonna get in them. On the lower level, you have a spot for your dry food, and then you got a spot to put your ice and your catch and all that. Now here is the coolest part about this system. When you're done fishing for the day, you just hit this right here, and it comes right off your boat, and you can stick this right in your car. And as a little cherry on top, I wanna show you this here. They even make a coffee cup here. So look at this. I've got my coffee in here like this. It's got a water top lid on it. It snaps right into the top of the tackle box. And if you open this up, take a look at this. Coffee goes sideways and nothing leaks out. This is the ultimate fishing tackle box solution for small boats.
We're all geared up, so we took our giant fishing paddleboard out into the Florida Everglades, out in the Blackwater swamp where the alligators are. With the electric trolling motor going, the board is really quiet and smooth and stealthy. It's going to be phenomenal for fishing. All the gear is really nice and accessible on the deck. I love how the board is laid out. The board is so big, it's so easy for the two of us to fish off the board. We were both fishing, we had no problem, we weren't getting in each other's way at all. Just gotta be a little bit mindful of the other person. But this gives you a lot of access to fish, 360 degrees. You can just turn around, you can sight fish, you're not stuck in a chair like you would be on a kayak. It's also really nice because if you're by yourself, you can actually operate the trolling motor and fish kind of at the same time, kind of make little micro corrections on where you're at with the trolling motor, so you don't really need like one of those auto GPS systems or something. It's very easy to manage this whole system by yourself, and obviously it's a lot more fun with two people to fish anyway, so that's why this board is perfect. And what's incredible is my jumbo fishing paddleboard has as much deck space on it as this expensive bass boat going by me, and I think my vessel can handle more waves than his. Thank you so much if you watched this far into the video. Please subscribe to the channel for more incredible boat builds, and please drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done differently on this jumbo fishing paddleboard.